Dudes and dudettes, how are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to Cinema Chazzy, the segment on this channel where I review the many movies that I watch over the years, whether they're old or new or modern or classic. I'm aware that some of those words are synonyms, but I refuse to change that intro there because it's my intro and I am stubborn and I have been already gotten used to it and this and that and the thing and whatnot and what that, so So guys, in case you haven't noticed, I've been doing some basketball related content lately, and so in keeping up with the theme there, I'm going to be reviewing my first basketball movie in a very long time. I think it's been a couple of years at this point, man. Holy freaking crap. Wow, I really miss doing this, and I got all dressed up today. You know, I got my little formal shirt here because I'm going to be reviewing the movie Hoosiers. One of my absolute most favorite sports dramas of all freaking time, released in 1986 and starring Gene freaking Hackman, a very great actor in his own right, which tells the story of a small town Indiana high school team that enters the state championship, which is actually inspired by the real Milan High School in Indiana, who won the state championship in 1954. You know, a very, thrilling underdog story, right? And the movie really captures that essence, right? The whole, facing your opponents in the face of adversity and nobody believing in you and you still being able to overcome the difficulties and the pressure and winning, because sports movies, they have a very similar formula across all of them, especially with the underdog theme, where a team that nobody believes in, nobody likes, that's inexperienced, and this and that, they start to slowly rise through the ranks and beat everybody out until they eventually, achieve ultimate glory. It's the ultimate American success story, which we just never get tired of seeing, right? So I love it so much. The movie itself was very successful financially because it had a budget of $6 million, right? And it went on to gross a whopping $28.6 million, which in 1980s money is quite a lot, man. I don't know exactly how a lot, but it's a lot, okay? It's really quite something, right? So the movie, with the plot points, the editing and the cinematography, everything just came together to weave an amazing motion picture. It's a great work of art. The basketball choreography especially is amazing for the time period. There are some things that didn't really sit very well with me. They felt a little cringy, but at the same time, it's the 80s, right? I love 80s movies, 80s culture. Even though I'm a 90s kid, something about the 80s and 70s, is very nostalgic to me, but especially the 1980s. I love that period so much. Some of my favorite movies ever are from the 80s, right? So, especially sports. So, yeah, man. That's just how it is, And it was actually directed by David Asbach in his feature directorial debut, and he did a very good job, if I didn't say so myself. The casting director, the producers, everything. But let me stop talking about all of that so I can have, a script for the rest of the video. Before I continue to talk a little about the plot, let's go ahead and take a look at a clip from Hoosiers.
Expecting somebody different?
Younger.
Most incredible and improbable confrontation. Well, those of you who don't know, my name is Norman Dale. I coached college ball for 10 years, but it's been 12 years since I've blown this. In the illustrious history of the Indiana High School basketball tournament.
That's a hell of a team you had there.
You knew that team?
I know everything there is to know about the greatest game ever invented.
The primary setting of the movie is in Hickory, Indiana, a very rural small town, right, in the 1950s. Norman Dale has now been has been hired, as the civics and history teacher and also the head basketball coach. And the townspeople are very passionate about basketball, but the team kind of sucks now, especially because one of their star players has kind of, isolated himself after the death of the former coach, was kind of like a father figure to him, right? So the team only has 7 players, and they do have some solid fundamentals in conditioning, but they really suck at scrimmaging and shooting, so Norman tries to help them pick up the slack a little bit. They are a little at ends with each other, and he has a very hot temper, even getting ejected from 2 games during the beginning of the season. And eventually, the players, he tries to make them pass a little bit more, like when he runs a play where they have to pass 4 times before shooting, one of the players does, and he keeps making baskets without, worrying about the team, so he gets benched. So it's very, lukewarm, the relationship with them, because it's Norman starting to become almost like a surrogate father to them as well. Not really an authority figure, but more of a fatherly, paternal thing, right? So eventually he even has to Eventually, he needs a little bit more help with an assistant coach, so he instructs this guy named Wilbur Flatch, right? His nickname is Shooter. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. And he's actually very passionate about basketball. He knows a lot about it. He watches the team play and gives a lot of really good feedback, but he happens to be a drunk, so Norman gives him an ultimatum. He says, you can be my assistant coach if you stay sober, while he also said that he will do it if Norman stops getting ejected from games. But now there is a lot of tension amongst the players with each other and other teams as well. Like there is a game where there's a little bit of a scuffle, you know, one of them gets hit in the chest and retaliates and gets gets ejected, and there are a lot of fundamental themes here involving basketball. Like for example, I'm going to read straight from the source for you guys here. Now, eventually people are starting to feel the need to dismiss Dale because of his misconduct, right? But there are also, here we go, they try to employ this slow defensive style that doesn't really produce any good results, you know, and they do try to play a little bit to, you know, their own strengths, but unfortunately the weaknesses outweigh them. Now eventually Shooter, you know, relapses, gets back into alcohol. His son Everett is actually playing on the team and kind of, you know, feels like his father's a disgrace. But as the events of the movie build up to a crescendo, you know, the team starts to win more games. There's a very moving moment towards the end where they are sitting, you know, they are standing in the actual basketball court where the final is. These are kids who grew up their entire lives in a rural town, so they don't know what it's like to play in the big leagues, you know. So the court is very, very different to them, you know. It's very, very quite something, and it's in Indianapolis, right? So now the game is played at Butler Fieldhouse in front of the largest crowd that they've ever seen. They do start to dominate, they play very well, and eventually at the final dying seconds, you know, Dale calls a timeout and sets up a play where a player named Gene is going to take the last shot, right? So actually, sorry, he's going to be a decoy for Merle who will take the last shot. It's been a while since I've seen this movie. I don't remember all of the players' names. I'm sorry. I have to cheat. I have to read directly from the source here, okay? The script. I'm sorry. So then, now he does actually make the shot and know what the buzzer beater, which secures the victory for them. And throughout the movie, we do see that the characters, they develop quite a lot. Dale, for example, has a relationship with a fellow teacher. There is a little bit of a shady past of his where he hit another player and was, you know, essentially banned from coaching for a while. And it does surface, and there is a lot of character conflict that is, you know, sort of, you know, in the midst there of them. So all of these things, they sort of complement each other, you know, like his dark past serves as a foley to the player's present and possible future, so I thought that was really cool as well. So yes, man, so his relationship with Myra, you know, there is sort of like a romance, you know, hinted there, which, you know, sets up a little spark as well. And that's essentially it. There is a very emotional final scene where Dale states, you know, in the background that I love you guys, it's cool. I really don't remember much of the details, do I? It's been like months since I've watched this movie, but it's still awesome. Before I talk about the cast and a little bit of the production, another clip here.
With a pint size hardly big enough for 3 syllables, Hickory Huskers, enrollment 64.
Out of here, right now.
You kicking me out?
Yes, don't come back until you learn to keep your mouth shut and listen.
Take on the defending state champions, the Mighty Bears of South Bend Central.
Run you off the boards. You got to squeeze them back in the paint. Make them chuck it from the cheap seats.
Already calling this the game of the century.
Now we can get into the cast, right? Let's start off with the man who needs no introduction, Gene Hackman as Coach Norman Dale. Gene is a phenomenal actor. He's been active in Hollywood for over 6 decades, and he's freaking 94 and still trucking, right? It's insane, man. Every movie that I've ever seen him in, whether it's, you know, main cast or supporting cast, he's always had this performance that seems to, you know, transcend the movie itself, right? We also have Barbara Hershey as Myra Fleener, who is the love interest and the other teacher as well, who tries to, you know, also kind of motivate the boys here and there. Then we have Dennis Hopper as Shooter Flash, right? This performance of his actually gained him a nomination for an Academy Award, I believe, so it's very nice how he portrayed, you know, kind of like a rags to riches story of an alcoholic, you know, who comes out of it, gets clean, relapses, comes back out again. It's really nice. It's a very good success story. Shabe Woolley as Cletus Summers, you know, one of the players, and, you know, kind of like I do believe he was one of the star players. However, Morris Valenius as Jimmy Chitwood is very interesting because he was the one who turned the tide during that little courtroom meeting where the town wanted to fire Dale, you know, as the head coach. But he's the star player. Everybody loves him. So when he walks in and says, "I will come back to the team if Coach Dale continues to be the coach," you know, everybody just like, wow, you know, really put us between a rock and a hard place here. It's a very emotional scene. But once Jimmy comes back, everything starts to click into place. David Nerdoff as Everett Flatch, who is the son of Shooter. You know, kind of feels like his dad is a little bit of a disgrace, but they do eventually, you know, how can I say, reconciliate at the very end. Then Brad Long as Buddy Walker, one of the other players also. Many of these actors are just the players on the squad that I can't really remember specifically. We also have Steve Holler as Rat Butcher, maybe one of the players who was a little bit more of a butcheritinous. Then we have Brad Boyle as Wit Butcher, so I guess they're siblings, you know, they're related, maybe they're cousins, I don't really remember that detail there. We have Wade Schneck as Ollie McLean, probably one of the secondary characters in the background. Then Kent Poole as Merle Webb, you know, one of the players who took the final shot at the very end, who won them the championship. Scott Summers from X-Men as Strap Pearl. That name is very interesting. The actor's name is the same name as the dude from X-Men. Then Fern Persons as Opal Fleener, right? One of the relatives of Barbara, probably her mom. Chelsea Ross as George Walker. I can't remember who any of these characters are. Somebody help me. Robert Swan as Rolene Butcher. Okay, so another member of the Butcher family. Michael Sasson as Preacher Pearl. I think I remember this guy. He was the preacher who preached the things and preached Ling Ling Ling. And then Gloria Durson as Millie. Could give her a last name to make it a little bit easier, huh? Michael O'Gean as Rooster. I think I do remember this character. The name is... Or am I thinking of Top Gun? That doesn't make any sense though. Hey, it's from the 80s. Hey, Top Gun. Also from 86, I believe, right? Hey, Will DeWitt as Reverend Dottie, right? That's quite something there. The guy, you know, reminds me of Footloose, who hates dancing. Then we have John Robert Thompson as Sheriff Finley. And finally, we have frickin' Hillard Gates as the radio announcer. Now, this movie was inspired a lot by the actual Indiana State Championship run in 1954, but it's more like it's, you know, it's not exactly based on it, it's more inspired because the teams actually have very little in common, but there were a few similarities. So like, for example, you know, just like the actual real life team, you know, Milan was a very small high school in a rural town. They both had undersized teams, you know, both of them won the final championships by just 2 points. So in real life, you know, they won no, wait, sorry. Hickory in the movie won by 42-40 and Milan won 32-30. The last seconds of the movie was actually very almost beat by beat, you know, a remake of what happened in real life, you know, because the last basket was made from almost the exact same spot as Bobby Plump, who made the real game winner. And the final game was actually filmed in the same gymnasium that hosted a state championship in real life in 54. So I thought that was really cool, a little nod in Indianapolis, which is where the Los Angeles Lakers are from, by the way, you know, no, sorry, that's Minneapolis. Or was it Indianapolis? I don't know my own team's history, my God. So yes. And unlike the actual film's plot, the team, they actually came into the season as heavy favorites. They finished the regular season with a record of 19-2, man. So they weren't underdogs like the movie made them out to be, but that was still the very first championship that they won. And you know, that team, they went to the state semifinals, you know, and they were considered a powerhouse, man. They were unstoppable. Like, everybody knew that they were gonna win. So it's quite something. I really like the idea of how the characters, you know, there are some very good character arcs, and the development is very impressive as well. I think that everybody played their roles really, really cool, especially at the actors who played what's the team's name? Hold on a second, let me just get it here for you guys. The South Bend Central Bears. The players were a lot taller, you know, more athletic and stronger than, you know, the main characters. So it gives us this theme of having to literally scale a mountain to get to, you know, the ultimate triumph. So I think it's cool, man. Very awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the production and behind the scenes now, but before that, one more clip.
Forget about the crowds, the size of the school, their fancy uniforms, and remember what got you here. If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
Here's a little fun fact for you guys. The directors actually had a little bit of difficulty securing enough extras for, you know, the home and away games, right? So they actually had to, they put out a casting call and everything, but they just, I don't know, people just weren't very interested. So in the end, they actually brought in 2 local high schools to actually fill in the court, you know, the stands. So what you guys see aren't extras. They're actual people from the town who were just filling in, you know? And then their actual games, those actual high school teams playing their games, that was filmed, you know, the crowd was real, the reactions, and the actors actually came in, you know, during halftime or before or after the game to film their shots, you know, their scenes there. I thought that was really cool. It's a very nice attention to detail. A lot of the fans that we see in the stands, you know, put on costumes, you know, to make it more thematic. So I thought it was nice. And like, they had to hire many people, you know, extras and random a lot of the cast, because their budget was very limited. So It went on to gross a lot of money and, you know, got 2 Academy Award nominations, but for some reason the producer, the movie studio didn't believe in it very much, you know? So now they actually chose New Richmond, Indiana to serve as the fictional town of Hickory, you know? And there, if you go there today, you will see a few elements of the movie having been shot there, you know? Like, I don't know, they have like signs in the road that indicate that, you know, it belongs to Hoosiers and whatnot. And the home court of Hickory in Kingstown was actually named Hoosier Gym, you know, in Hoosier Gym. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Hoosier Gym. Jesus and crackers. So yes, man. So despite the small budget and the predicaments here and there, you know, and there was very little help from Orion Pictures who distributed it, and still the movie went on to be very successful. The soundtrack was also really impressive. It really captures that rhythmic energy of basketball in a traditional setting, you know. It just feels more, I don't know, it just feels very grounded and authentic. It feels like this really is a basketball movie that we're watching, which I think was very impressive in my honest opinion. So, and everything about it is very charming. It's really innovative in a creative way. This is the 80s we're talking about. Sports movies in the 70s and 80s and 90s were very, very, you know, like, it really depends on what you like, right? It's like, me personally, I think that basketball in the 80s was done very well, but in the 2000s it kind of hit its peak, you know? We're talking like Glory Road and Coach Carter, you know, He Got Game. No, He Got Game was in the 90s, but you know what I mean. Football movies to me were a lot better in the 90s and 2000s, you know? So we've got like Rudy, Any Given Sunday, Friday Night Lights, We Are Marshall, you know, The Blind Side, this and that, and it just keeps going. Whereas hockey seems to lack a little bit, but, you know, like with hockey, all I can remember is like Slapshot from the 70s, and then, you know, Goon and whatnot. You know, there was a Miracle. Why am I talking about other sports? But the point is that the 80s were very interesting for sports films, you know, sports dramas, and Hoosiers really stood out, right? It wasn't perfect, but I think the way that they shot the film was very nice. Attention to detail and choosing a place in Indiana to serve as the backdrop for the city, the action, cinematography, you know, with the actual basketball scenes, I think it was done very, very well. It was shot and edited very elegantly, right? So I have nothing to complain about the cinematography, especially for the late 80s. It's very nice. The actors, they played off of each other very well. It's a really impressive array of acting, especially from the younger cast. And getting to work with Gene Hackman and Dennis Hooper, you know, it's just Dennis Hopper, sorry. I don't know, man, it's freaking crazy. And the movie wasn't perfect. There were a few issues here, you know, like the technical side, because we're talking about the limitations of the 80s and the very small budget. There were some things that came off as even a little bit cringy at times and campy, but you know, it still doesn't affect the overall rating. To me, this movie is almost flawless. It's nearly perfect, which is why I'm gonna give it a rating of a 9 out of 10, right? Everything was good, man, but there were a few things here and there that just didn't really sit well with me. Like when you go back and watch old 80s movies like freaking, I don't know, some that come to mind, like freaking Christine or Bloodsport, you know, like you can appreciate what they tried to do with the time period, but I don't know, man. Maybe the experience would have been a lot better at the actual time, right? But still, there you go. I love 80s cinema, but I don't know, just some things could have been done a little bit better. And also, here we go. Now, in 2001, you know, the movie was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry, you know, because it was, no, in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, because it was deemed as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And it also earned 2 Oscar nominations, you know, like for Best Actor for Dennis Hopper. What else was it nominated for? Come on, let me find it here. I know that there's more. Here we go, the accolades. There we go. So it was nominated for, where is the freaking Oscar nominations? Tell me, god dang it, I want to know what it was nominated for. I need to read about the Oscars and the freaking thing. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought about this movie. You know, if you liked it, if you ever watched it, and if you didn't, you gave yourself a bunch of spoilers because you suck. You're an idiot. Stop spoiling stuff for yourself, sadomasochistical maniac. And stay tuned to the community tab where I'll run a poll or two, you know, maybe a quiz, talk about it, share some behind the scenes photos of the movie. I don't know, I always like to do that kind of thing when I review movies. And if you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, hit the notification button so I can know exactly what time I upload. It's all good. Gonna be playing some more NBA 2K24, so stay tuned to that as well. This is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Roll the final clip of the movie if there is one, and then the outro screen.
I love you guys.
Gene Hackman, Barbara Hershey, Dennis Hopper. Hoosiers. they needed a second chance to finish first.